Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Destination Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Stoker. Today's show is going to be a fun one. I had the opportunity a few weeks ago to go speak at the NAFDMA, and that's an agritourism convention, and talked a lot about the concepts that I've talked with you all about owned media and how to make sure that you are building a more sustainable marketing plan and strategy. And what was fun is tailoring that to the agritourism industry and sharing some examples from the agritourism industry of how certain attractions in the agritourism space have leveraged owned media to build a community and be more successful. And after that speech, I had someone come up to me who had listened to the show, and turns out we've got way more in common than we thought we did, and we've gotten to know each other over the last few weeks. His name is Andrew Miller, and he is the founder, farmer, and CEO of Tulip Valley Farms in Washington. And Andrew, I'm really excited to have you join me today.
Oh, I am excited too. This is going to be a hoot.
Awesome. So I guess my first question that I want, before we dive into the normal questions, is why is a farmer in Washington listening to the Destination Marketing Podcast?
Isn't that something? Yeah. So I'm not just any farmer. I'm a flower farmer. I'm actually a colorblind tulip farmer of all things. And so the whole focus of our farm is getting people out onto the farm, which is in and of itself a destination. So my background is in research and in solving wicked problems. And so I cast a really broad net as to some of the solutions and some of the elements of what people were working on. And I found your podcast, and it's been really useful in some of the ideas that we've been able to bring and say, hey, this is something that we try to get people to come out on our farm in the same way that a lot of other destinations are competing for people's attention. So, yeah.
Well, and I think that's a great point, right? Like, and we'll talk about Tulip Valley Farms so that our listeners can have a little bit better picture, but you treat your farm like a destination. And so a lot of the things that we talk about are very applicable. You're kind of a micro version of some of these destinations that I'm talking to as far as DMOs and CVBs go.
That's exactly it. We're a nested destination in a larger destination, right? And so I like to say we're nested and aligned where we can be, right? Where you can say, hey, there's a reason that people come to our community is to see the tulips. And what else, right? So there's a reason every season to come and actually visit the Skagit Valley, and there's tulips. While we're just a month long phenomena, that it puts a lot of pressure on me to create a lot of revenue in a short period. So we're swimming in deep water on that, and so we want to use every ounce of leverage that we can possibly bring to bear. But at the same time, it benefits the entire community,
Yeah.
year round when people come by and they're like, wow, I didn't know that you had, mountains to the right of you and the Puget Sound to the left of you. And it just, this incredible natural beauty that people, got keyed to because of tulips.
Love it. Love it. Well, let's kind of. I think I got a little ahead of myself and already dove into some of the fun part of the conversation. But I want to know for you. I mean, the Skagit Valley is a beautiful place. But from a dream destination perspective, if you could go anywhere in the world beyond where you live, where would it be?
So I saw this question coming. It actually hit me the other day. I want to go to Iran really
Whoa.
bad. Yeah, it is such. I mean, I love the mountains. And I want to go somewhere wild. That's a little bit maybe. It will certainly not. I don't know that I want to go to Iran today, but when things open up, I would love to be. I think Rick Steves has been there, and kind of. It seems like a fascinating place with beautiful people, amazing culture that is just beyond the reach of most people. It's kind of up there with Cuba, and
Yeah.
another place that I would love to go to visit, and also Scotland. So that way I could take my wife because I don't think she wants to go to Iran, but she would really like to go visit Scotland.
So just when I thought I had heard all the possible destinations on this show, Iran is definitely a new option here. I can confidently say I don't believe that's ever been said on
Yeah.
the show. It kind of tells me that you might be a little bit of an adrenaline junkie,
Well,
Andrew.
there is that. I am certainly a nonconformist, so I like being out there a little ways. Yeah.
So you said when things open up, obviously it's relatively dangerous, I would say, in the current climate for Americans to go
Yeah.
over there. Is this something you'd like to do in the next 5, 6, 7 years, or is it just kind of wait and see? And when the
I think it's
political
wait and see.
climate,
I would love to be on the first flight in as soon as it's safe, as long as I'm not putting myself in undue political danger, right? The danger comes on a spectrum. I mean, I've just gone backcountry in Uganda and been really all over the world, which is kind of a fun. I used to be an Air Force intelligence officer, and I was attached to units that did counterterrorism and counter transnational crime and narcotics. So I'd find myself in the jungles of Indonesia or Colombia, and those were fun places. I'd love to go back to those places as more of a tourist than as an assignment.
yeah.
But Iran is as soon as it opens up, I'd love to be. And then they have tulips, so I need to go. I need to go hunt tulips in the wild. And I think, of course, Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan and Iran are all natural. That's where the tulips come from.
I love it. I love it. So you went through a lot there, so I want to go back a little bit. But one of the things that what you just said tells us is I think you're much better equipped than the average person to maybe go to a dangerous place like Iran, based on your background. I mean, to have been a counterintel, or did you say counterterrorism?
Counterterrorism, yeah.
You did counterterrorism work, intelligence officer in the Air Force. If you got into a sticky situation in Iran, you're probably much more likely to find your way out of that sticky situation than I would be with my experience. And so I can see why that might appeal to you. I gave a presentation last week on risk taking and the importance of risk taking. And I thought as I stood up on that stage that I was very, I'm not risk averse. And then I talk to you, and you tell me a little bit about your perspective and background, and I'm starting to feel pretty risk averse.
Oh, I don't know. I like to say no risk it, no biscuit, but everybody has a different appetite for the biscuit. So, and different types, different strokes for different folks, different risk.
Awesome.
It's all on the spectrum. But yeah.
Well, tell me about a favorite travel memory that you have. This can be from growing up, it can be as an adult, whatever you think is the one that stands out.
I think, and it's pretty recent. Last October, I had a chance to travel to the Netherlands for the first time. To really, as I'd flown through there, but I got to spend about 10 days in the Netherlands with my wife for the World Tulip Summit. So my parents came, and that's because I got to keynote at the World Tulip Summit. And
cool.
so it was in The Hague in the Netherlands, which is all kinds of jokes about me being sent to The Hague. But it was such a delight because there was a kind of a state dinner where there were 7 different ambassadors, and I got to sit next to the ambassador of the United States at this Tulip Summit. And then our farm received an award for the most scenic tulip farm in the world, which is great. And then I received an individual award for leadership in agritourism, which
Oh, wow.
I've only been at it for about 6 years, and so to be globally recognized, both our farm and then as a thought leader in the space, and to be able to share that with my family, especially my wife, who has not really enjoyed travel that much, but now has fallen in love with Holland. So I get to go to Holland as often as our circumstances allow.
Amazing. So you got to kind of intertwine some of your professional accomplishments and recognition with a unique travel experience, and that's kind of why that one really sticks out to you.
Absolutely. Yep. So I went from having a tux on at a state dinner with, getting a hug from the U.S. ambassador to the next day I was on my knees planting tulips at Kokenhof, which is basically the Shangri-La of all tulips. And so that was an extraordinary experience.
Oh, how fun. Well, what a great trip, and it's fun to hear that your wife also, who didn't love to travel maybe as much before, fell in love with Holland, and now you're going to be able to get her out there
That's
easier.
it. That is exactly. We may be able to go here this May. Hopefully the bloom lines up. We've been there when they were planting. We'd love to be there to see more color, but it's the same time that we've got color in our farm, so things have to line up.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you sharing some of that with us, and I'd like to dive in a little bit to our discussion today. And number one, I think it's important as I bring people on the show for people to get a kind of a picture of your background. And with most people, I'll just say, tell me about your background. But with you, because we found a few interesting things that we have in common, I'll have you start with the 2 years that you spent in Brazil. And for our listeners also, there's a gap between Air Force intelligence officer and receiving a global award for agritourism leadership. It feels like there's got to be a few events that happened in between those two things. So maybe help us fill in the gaps as well with your background.
Oh, you bet. So I grew up in the best place in the world to grow up, here in Mount Vernon, Washington. So we're about halfway between Vancouver, BC, and Seattle, and then turned 19 and went to, similar to you, we went off to Brazil as missionaries for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so I had a couple of years of French and a couple of years of Spanish, and poof, I landed in the favelas of Brazil speaking Portuguese, where again I learned to love a culture that wasn't my own. I think I was born Brazilian, but I was in the United States, and so I absolutely loved my time in Brazil. And I lived in the central west of Brazil, and so my area went from tributaries of the Amazon into Brasilia, the capital, and all around there. And I just absolutely loved my time there. Where that may be where I really started to really hone my risk appetite. It's not an unrisky thing yet, but came home from Brazil and married the sister missionary that was sitting next to me on the plane. So my wife also served in the same mission as I did. And of course, you don't date as missionaries, but we flew into SeaTac together and spent some time together and decided that we wanted to make an eternal go of it. And so we were married shortly after we got
Well,
back. And then
that's a long plane ride. Like that's a lot of time to get
it's
to know
28
somebody.
hours, right? Yeah. So her maiden name was Mertlick and I'm Miller. And so, sat next to each other on the plane and off we went. And 6 years or 6 kids later and 28 years and we're still cooking with gas. And so
Oh,
that's been a great
congrats.
ride. But then I joined the Air Force. I was a linguist. I was a Spanish. I was a Portuguese. I already spoke Portuguese, and then in their infinite wisdom, the U.S. Air Force decided that if they added Spanish to my list, that I'd be able to communicate with about 98% of the people in or listen to rather, 98% of the people in our hemisphere. And so I was a Spanish and Portuguese linguist. I got to fly around in the back of airplanes listening for bad guys, which was a great job. Went to school, finished my degree, commissioned as an intelligence officer. And then after about 7 years on active duty, transitioned to full-time National Guard so that I could go to law school. I picked up a master's in organizational leadership from Gonzaga while I was on active duty, and then I went to Seattle University's law program at night, and then also started working in Homeland Security and got pulled into that side of thing, planning, and was a student of the Center for Homeland Defense and Security at the Naval Postgraduate School, which was phenomenal. Post 9/11, got thrown in deep there, and then because I passed the bar exam and wasn't practicing law, I figured I'd do what every other lawyer that doesn't want to practice law does and go get my MBA. And so I got my MBA from Pacific Lutheran University as
Can I
well. And
stop you just real quick?
yeah,
And I mean, you talk about it sounds like, and I'm not no mathematician, but somewhere between, 12 and 15 years in the military, and you did some pretty wild things and had some wild responsibilities during that time. Can you share a story or two of some of the interesting situations you found yourself in? Obviously, you're not going to share classified information
yeah.
with us, but everybody loves a good story because, especially of the type of military service that you did, because we just don't get exposed to that at all. So, would you be willing to share any of
Yo,
that?
for sure. And there's a travel aspect to it. So I was also teaching at the same time I was teaching in the graduate program at the American Military University. And there was a grant opportunity to go to Uganda and actually share some of our lessons learned because my focus area was on Homeland Security intelligence, kind of a domestic intelligence type thing. And so I had a chance, flew over to Uganda and actually had a rolling interview with the Prime Minister of Uganda. And this was one of those where it was cleared through the military channels and also the academic channels because I had this unique experience of being both an academic and a practitioner of Homeland Security intelligence. And so we waited at the hotel for a couple days, and then sure enough, sitting in the hotel lobby, and then everybody disappeared. And I was like, wait, where'd everybody go? Like, this is kind of freaky. And then a couple of Ugandan soldiers walk in and they said, the Prime Minister will see you now. And so that's kind of really random. Which thing I never had supposed to hear the Prime Minister will see you now. And he, we hop in his limo and go over to the ministry of where his office was. And the first thing he says, are you here as a professor or as a spy? And I said, well, I am not a spy. I am a practitioner. I am an intelligence officer, but I'm not a spy. but I am really here to share. So I'm here as an academic and as a professor, and so I got to share basically my thesis that I had written at the Naval Postgraduate School about the purpose of Homeland Security Intelligence being to help people more people make better decisions over the long term, and not
Wow.
just a battlefield type thing. So yeah, that was kind of exciting.
Yeah, what an experience. That had to be really eerie as the hotel cleared out before you knew
Yes.
what the next step
Like,
was.
it really was a blink, and where'd everybody go? And then, yeah, no, somebody wants to talk to you. Right, in
Oh, how
Uganda.
cool.
Terrific.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, I interrupted your journey, but it's always fun to hear the stories. And Andrew, thank you for your service.
Oh,
Seriously,
yeah, no,
really
it was the best
appreciate
thing.
that.
But anyway, so I came off active duty and I went to work at Expedia. That was the thing. I've got 6 kids, 2 of them are on the autism spectrum, and we really had enjoyed our time in military service, but we decided that we wanted a little bit more certainty of what I was going to be doing with my time. So I signed on with Expedia. I worked in their global continuity department there, the planning background, and then I failed forward into Amazon, and I worked global security and public safety at Amazon. I had 3 bosses in 9 months and said, not what I want to do.
Hmm.
And so we decided what we wanted to do was move home. We were living about an hour south of Seattle, and so we moved home for me about an hour north. And I got a job working in economic development, which is really how this story really starts. Is I had a chance to take all of my life experience, bring it home as a trilingual JD MBA in a relatively small farming community, and really take a clear eye look at strategy. What would the future of our community look like? And so I got paid to have hard and long conversations about the future with people who are not exactly typically considered visionary. Everybody wants it to stay the same like it never was in the 80s. But the fact of the matter is that we've got a completely renovated we can't even really say upgraded, but the global economy has changed so much, and trends are so fierce to those who are unwilling to change. And so had a lot of conversations that ended with, if it's such a good idea, Andrew, why don't you do it? And I don't need the temptation to be challenged like that. I've got big enough chip on my shoulder. So we did. I got some partners together and we went in and we started purchasing some of these iconic businesses in our communities that we feel like could really move forward. One of them was a tulip farm, because I found out, there is nothing more iconic for my community than tulips. But that's because at one point we had about 4,000 acres. Now there's 80,000 acres of arable land, of farmland in Skagit Valley, and it's what we're known for. But really, really known for our tulips. But at its height, that was about 4,000 acres, which is majestic. It's absolutely
Yeah.
beautiful. But now we're down to less than 200 acres. And I noticed that people keep coming expecting to see 4,000 acres of color. Well, we needed to make some adjustments, because that the people that come to visit drop between 65 and 83 million dollars worth of economic benefit on our community, and without those tulips, our community, my neighbors, would be really missing out. And so that's really why we went headlong. I said, not on my watch type thing. And I said, we're going to do what we can do. And I think there's some adjustments and improvements can be had. And so as things iterate, 3 years ago, I split off from those partners and we started Tulip Valley Farms with a long list of what I considered customer friction. Things that people wanted to do on a tulip farm but weren't able to do, just because typically those tulip farms were created by tulip farmers, right? And I am not. I don't have the burden of growing up as a tulip farmer. What I know is that people want to get out onto a farm, have a great time. They will spend 4 hours in traffic. They will fly from Thailand or the Philippines or Costa Rica or Dallas just to see my tulips. And so we needed to create experiences that were commensurate with that sacrifice, or it is a sacrifice, that
Yeah.
investment that people are willing to make. And I didn't find that was extremely common among the purveyors of the tulip experience that were available. And so we started Tulip Valley Farms with that premise.
So this is something that I think is kind of a cheat code for people coming into an industry that they don't know, is you get the opportunity to say, wait, why do we do it this way?
Yeah.
Why do we do it that way? Why are you doing it this way? And what you start to realize is that the answer, especially in some, I would say, less modern industries, and I would call farming a less
Oh,
modern industry in a lot of cases,
yep.
you start to recognize that there's far too many questions of which the answer could be, well, we've always done it this way.
Right.
And it sounds to me like as you got in and started asking questions, you saw the opportunity that, okay, the why is not lining up with what actually needs to happen. And I'm curious, what are some of the things that you identified as you came in and asked questions, more from an economic development perspective, more from a just life experience, strategic education perspective? What were some of your findings that helped you create what is now a very successful endeavor in Tulip Valley Farms?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, and that is really reversing, or at least substituting the, well, we've never done it this way. The why is because it's worked. And then not recognizing that it worked in a time that no longer exists is very dangerous. And so not only is that no longer, you don't have the safety of it worked, but really flipping it around and saying, how, right? How is it that we're going to meet our needs as a business? How is it that we can orient what it is that we do to a willing customer, and to being able to say some of these principles of the hardest thing in business is to get and keep customers, right? And that is not common among agriculture. You don't have to think about that because you're not typically customer facing. But in agritourism, you have all the complexity and challenges of running a farm. At the same time, it is an entertainment business, or it is an educational business. It has all of these elements, and to turn around to say, okay, if this, whereas this is true, and so it's all making bets, right? It's all, you want to make a bet,
Yeah.
and literally sometimes you're betting the farm, but you're betting the farm in a direction
You're
that is
literally betting the farm.
literally betting the farm, right? And so to be able to turn around and say, we think that this will create new value, or this will create value for existing customers, right? These very common business principles that are brought to bear in agriculture, really, that, on the agritourism side, or value added agriculture, are, that to me, they're super fascinating. And so a couple of examples that we used that I enjoyed was during COVID, we had to do time ticketing, right? So you would come out, you buy a ticket for 9 o'clock in the morning, and then, but the challenge was, and that's fine, we did it because we had to, and it created, it worked out in many ways, but it also forced me to sit down and look at my window for generating revenue is basically the month of April. And I look at it and I say, well, there's 8 hours at night that I'm working. I would rather be on the farm with other people. Too bad people can't come to the farm at night. And I said, well, what if they could? They said, well, that's stupid. It's like, well, no, what if it's not stupid? What if we put lights on the field? What if we had lights on the field? We had night bloom. And so we do night bloom. And we do night bloom because it creates an additional opportunity for me to invite people back. So now I've got the same customer that will now pay me twice for two different experiences for the same flowers in a different environment. But also what it does is it helps my community, because now we have people who may have been day tripping who will say, no, I get a hotel, because now they'll get a hotel and then they'll buy dinner and then they'll buy breakfast, right? And now so they're staying in my friends' hotels, they're eating in my friends' restaurants, all because I had the audacity to say, I think we should be able to enjoy tulips at night.
So I love what you did there, and I know there's more innovations that you did, but let's focus on this one for just a moment, because until you made that change, there was a what I'll call finite cap on the amount of revenue that could be generated by a tulip farm. And
Right.
that cap was based on daylight available.
Yes.
And instead of just accepting, okay, well, this is out of my control. I don't control when the sun comes up and when it goes down. So I guess that's just all the revenue that we can make. You ask the question, wait, what if? What if we turned lights on and made it where you can have a different tulip experience? And then the result of that is it's probably not double, but I would say it's a major percentage increase in revenue opportunity that now suddenly takes your business from having this cap on it and this inability to generate additional revenue, and scale it to the point where now you have more money to reinvest in the farm, more money to grow the business, more money to create a better experience, none of which would have happened if you didn't say, wait, why can't we do this?
Right. Oh, for sure. No, and it's a little bit of, I like to lean into technology opportunities, right? Both because it's sexy and it gets people into, it gets attention, but at the same time we're using electricity, which is available to just about anyone, right? So if we start with something technological advance like power, electrical, we turn around and say, okay, well, what about audio tours? What about some of these other innovative solutions that are happening all over the place, and to be able
Yeah.
to say, okay, here's something that we can bring to our farm. We can try it. people they either adopt or they don't, or we adapt, right? And so that's to be able to say it's a low barrier, high reward
Yeah.
bet. And we keep looking at those. I mean, just today I was looking at, man, the bloom's a little bit late and I've got all these daffodils. Maybe next year I plant daffodils with tulips, which nobody does. Or maybe
Yeah.
I do something different with, we're Tulip Valley Farms, but you grow daffodils? Yeah, because really it's about people who want to get out onto a farm. And that's as old as it gets.
Well, and for our listeners, I want to make sure that this takeaway is very clear for the listeners, because all of you, and I have the same issue in my business, we are operating within fake constraints that sometimes
Right.
we even made for ourselves,
Yes.
right? Where we told ourselves, well, here's a wall that I can't push through. And I hope everybody, as you're listening to this, recognizes what are those constraints that I believe are there that aren't really constraints, and what questions can I ask to help break through those constraints and find an additional revenue opportunity. I mean, one thing that I saw you do that you and I discussed, and by the way, just the fact that you're a colorblind tulip farmer is it's one of my favorite things about you, because it just shows that that's another constraint that for most people they would have said, well, I guess I can't do anything related to color because I can't even tell which colors are the ones that other people are seeing.
Right.
And yet you're a colorblind tulip farmer. I think it's a great premise for why you're successful in your role. But the other thing that you've done from a business model perspective is you actually charge people to come in and harvest the bulbs of your tulips themselves. Whereas I think a lot of business, and I know you're not the only one that does this, the you pick method, but I just love the fact that people are paying you to do some of the work that you would have to pay to do if you were doing it on your own. And I just get such a kick out of the fact that this you pick model is working for Tulip Valley Farms.
And it distinguishes, it puts us right now. So I think by my math, there's about 100 farms in the United States and Canada that do some form of U-pick tulips. It's more common than not. And the Skagit Valley Tulip Festival is the largest tulip festival in North America, but nobody was doing U-pick. And so for me, that was just a blinking signal that somebody needed to get into it. But even our first season, we weren't all U-pick. We had a U-pick section. People loved it. And then I made the decision, that's it. We're going to go all U-pick, except for some of the garden areas that my wife plants, right? But for the most part, everything is U-pick, and people absolutely love it because flowers are personal. And so when we can make that connection of not only is this not an homage or some museum where you just come and look but don't touch the tulips, that's not the type of agriculture. That's not the type of experience that I want. We literally have people that come out with their families. Kids take off their shoes, go running down the grass pathways, they're splashing around in the canal. I could not be happier for that family because they're creating lifetime memories, which is great for that family unit, but it's also fantastic for my business model because now they have an emotional attachment to my farm. They will always have these memories that we've created. And so we're a memory machine, right? To be able to turn around and say, we're actually selling psychological trophies, for lack of
Yeah.
better, like souvenirs. It is
Hold on a second.
it's
Hold
an
on a second.
emotional souvenir.
You're onto something. How do we all create psychological trophies for the visitors that come to our destination, right? If you can
Right.
actually have them walk away with a psychological trophy, the loyalty that will create is very significant. And so that concept that you just said off the cuff of trying to come up with the word, a
Yeah.
psychological trophy is actually a really, I think, valuable way to describe it.
It is, and they did it themselves, right? I think that's the part. It's participative, right? People want to come out. This is not you take as long as you want on my farm. I have people that throw blankets out and take a nap or play board games, and I am so here for that, right? I love the fact that I've created it, and people are turning it into what they need. And I'm creating lifetime memories, which will turn into the lifetime value of that customer. I don't know yet because this hasn't been done yet. I think the closest that I have is, as the way I look at it, about half of the people that come to the Skagit Valley Tulip Festival are coming for the first time. That means half of the people are coming back to revisit memories that they've made. I think either way, I've got marketing opportunities in both sets to be able to say, it's easier to keep customers because they had a great time, but also to use those customers to create new customers that can enjoy it. I was thinking similarly, if it wasn't for tulips, because growing up here in the Schedule, I didn't go see too many tulips because there's so much traffic. But now with Night Bloom, man, more than half of the people that come to Night Bloom are locals that had never seen the tulips before because they were trying to stay away from traffic. But I look at the emotional trophies that I have. It's like the first time I took my kids to Moab, right? They wanted to go to Moab because people that they know that are adventurous go to Moab, right? And now my son just sent me a text. He's in Rexburg and was like, "Hey, he's taking his wife to Moab for the first time. They're going to Escalante." And so people do, he's revisiting that because people like me do things like this, right? And so that's the people that are adventurous, people that want to get a break and see the wide open, southern Utah, or for me it's climbing Mount Rainier, right? That's an emotional psychological trophy that I suffered for. But people like me do things like that. And so there's to be able to create industries and really business models around that. Or I think I don't know that that's the future, but that is certainly where the middle of the success line lies for our industry.
Awesome. I want to talk about one more feature of your farm, and then I actually want to get into maybe we'll wax philosophical on customer experience creation for a moment. But I want to talk about the fact that most farms, if you're a farmer looking at your farm, you see it kind of in acres and in blocks. And with you and your farm, you've built it as an experience for the consumer, which means you have built pathways through the middle of these blocks that a farmer would normally see, or the acres that a farmer would normally see. It's honestly like it. I could see a farmer who has kind of grown up doing it one way for their whole life. As you kind of blaze the path through the tulips, I could see it just hurting, as you're building a trail through the middle of the farm. But you've intertwined this trail system in your farm in such a way that people can walk out in the field. It's not like they're just walking around the boundary and looking from the outside. They get to be truly in there with the tulips. And again, I think it's just another customer experience enhancement that you've done.
Yeah, and it is the absolute least efficient way to farm. It is a hassle. Like my farm, I farm between rows of hazelnut trees on a 20-foot space, right, and we leave the grass, and it is such a hassle to farm around. And the reason we do it is because it is by far the best way for our guests to enjoy the tulips, right? I could have done it like everybody else, but we didn't because we don't want to have an experience like everybody else. And so
Right.
for a commodity farmer, it is a complete game changer. But the measure of success, the economic success for a commodity farmer is going to be, bushel weight, or, the profit. But I think what we have in common is profitability per acre. And that's what I work backwards from. And I challenge, I don't think there's a higher profitability per acre in farming than agritourism, because it's repeatable, but it's not for everyone, right? You
Yeah.
have to enjoy the storytelling. You have to really enjoy creating experiences and being with people, because that is where those psychological trophies lie. These are the souvenirs, the memory souvenirs that people take. It's not, I went to the most highest productive wheat farm or pumpkin patch in the world. It's like this place was designed for me, and I felt, my team calls me a feeling farmer, and I'll accept that. I do. We work backwards because I think once the most scarce resource that we have in the economy is attention. So when I can get somebody's attention and keep it and send them home with a lifetime of memory, my business model will sort itself out. We will be able to figure out how to derive value, but it's capturing value and conveying it like it's never been done before, and we embrace that at Tulip Valley Farms, and that's not for everybody.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. So when we're talking about, well, actually, I want to go back because you did say one thing in that I want everybody that's listening to recognize. You said that the metric that is important to a traditional farmer, that's the same metric that's important to you in agritourism. is this profitability per acre, right?
Right.
You are just getting to that number in a completely different way, and you've done it in such a way that it's more profitable than a traditional farmer per acre. And so as I look at that, I also think there are so many of us who are looking at metrics historically, but we're looking at it like a traditional farmer is looking at those metrics, as opposed to, well, if I used this asset in a different way, or if I created a different customer experience, could I be more profitable per acre? And I think there's a lot of different businesses that question could apply to. And again, that goes back to those fake constraints that sometimes we construct for ourselves.
Right. Well, if you compete on price, the problem is that it's a race to the bottom. You might win, and then what? Right. And especially in agriculture, where commodity, it just leads to the consolidation, and consolidation eventually just becomes a math problem that accountants get to decide your future. And so to be able to step back and say, what I want most is, and for us, what we want most is to run a profitable agritourism operation. We want our farm to be successful in ways that matter for us and for our guests. And we're able to do that because my biggest constraint on my farm is my parking lot. What a good problem to have, right?
Yeah.
And so on a sunny Saturday or a Sunday with Tulip Festival, I could not have a parking lot big enough. And yet I have a county who is concerned that my parking lot is too big because I'm not farming it. Well, we need to take a step back and we have a policy discussion about what successful farming looks like. Is it a revenue generation, or is it calorie per square foot? Or, because calories are not our challenge in farming. Right? It really is in a post-modern world coming out of World War II. Before in the turn of the century, everybody lived on a farm or knew someone who did.
Yep.
And so this is as much a part of people getting out and understanding that chocolate milk doesn't come from brown cows, right? It's remarkable the amount of education that we get to do, and from an ecological perspective, and because you can read a lot, but then you can talk to a farmer, and that's a huge part of what we do. And I think there is delight in discovery. And so being able to shock and impress our guests, it really is about delight. And people do come out and have a great time and are absolutely delighted.
I love it. We've got a few more minutes. And one of the things that I wanted to make sure to get to for the people that are listening is there is danger when you're saying, what if? And saying, okay, well, what if we added lights and did night bloom? What would happen then? And I could see somebody who's faced with that decision, and then they go and they build out the electrical system and they put the lights up and everything, and nobody comes. Well, if that's the case, then the stuff that you and I are describing today could be looked at as a failure. So what if, I guess that's my question, when you're doing customer experience innovation, what if it doesn't work?
Right. No, that's the test and iterate part, right? To be able to say, okay, now you need to deconstruct it and say, did it not succeed because we didn't have enough customers, because not enough people knew about it? Did the people that the few people that came, did they enjoy it? Did they not enjoy it? Did we fail on the marketing side? Did we fail on the production side? Did we fail on the economics? Did it just cost way too much to create this event that not enough people were to be able to come? So the reasons for failure are a multitude, right? There are so many ways that we can mess this up. But I think unless you're growing, I read something the other day. I think Alex Hormozy was saying, if you're not growing at 9%, you're on borrowed time, right? And so you could sit there and say, oh no, my farm is just we're just fine. Well, just fine is going out of business, and it's just a matter of time. And so if you're not, especially in agritourism, where there's an expectation that now you're on the entertainment side, what are you adding? How are you keeping that sharp? Because if people come to your farm and they're bored because they've already seen that or done this, then that is a challenge, right? And the same could be said for any business. That's why when you go to outdoor recreation, it's like now there's bungee jumping, and now there's like extreme Jeep rides and all these other things. And it's not just for the adrenaline junkies. It's for we're psychologically wired for novelty. And so to be able to say, this is new, this is different, this is cool, right? This resonates with me. But betting the farm on the first one, like that could be considered irresponsible.
Yeah, I would say a couple of things that I would give people that might be listening and maybe fearful that the first thing they try could be a failure or something. Number one is start small, test
Yeah,
small things. Like, don't mow down all the tulips thinking that you might create a new type of customer experience. Like, that's probably not a safe bet to make.
right.
Test small, start small, get some data, and then as you start to learn in small ways, then you can take the big bet because you've got the data to back it up. The other thing that I would say is you either win when you try something new or you learn. There's no
For
such
sure.
thing as failure because it's very valuable to know what doesn't work or what's not going to work. And so then you can optimize and can you continue to evolve and get better and better. And I think those are some important things for people who are thinking about trying something new to be aware of.
Oh, for sure. And I'll use example. And people complain about having to use porta potties, right? Well, it's a farm. There's porta potties. So I thought, you know what, we're going to get these really nice flush toilets, and they're these units that you see at like weddings that are kind of high end
Yep.
porta potties and stuff like that. And we got those crazy expensive. Nobody used them, right? And so was that a failure, or did I just learn that that wasn't a price point, that wasn't a distinguisher? I wasn't able to differentiate on that, so we went back to porta potties. Like I actually struggle wrestling with. I have a list of the things that didn't work out the way I thought. But it wasn't because it was a bad idea. It might be too early. It might have been the bleeding edge instead of the leading edge. But sitting back and counting your money is not a way to be successful. I think in any business, but especially in the destination business, because people really they want to see what's new. They're there for the feelings. And so unless we're keep signing up, keep putting forward new and innovative solutions, I think we could be lulled into a false sense of security.
Yeah, I think anybody that finds themselves successful has to fill a bucket of failures along the
Oh,
way
for
in order
sure.
to get there.
When I read something the other day, it was like the first 3 to 5 years is not for making money; it's for getting good, right? And I felt that kind of resonated with me. We're in
Yeah,
our third season. We're growing at year over year 100%, right? So we feel like we've really landed on something good. It doesn't get easier; it gets harder in different ways, and we get better. And so that's the part where in another couple years we'll know for sure where our trajectory is. But it's not going to be because we just sat back and decided here's what works. It will be because we continue to innovate.
I love it. Well, this has been a lot of fun. We're kind of bumping up against the end of our time, Andrew. I'd love to have you back on again another time to maybe go into more detail about some other components of your business and strategy and how it could benefit destinations. But in the meantime, if somebody wants to learn more about you or Tulip Valley Farms, maybe pick your brain on some of the stuff you've talked about today, what's the best way for them to do so?
Oh, for sure. So Tulip Valley Farms is our website. You can email me at andrew@tulipvalley.com is probably the best way to get a hold of me, or I'm also on LinkedIn or Instagram as well. So we can follow our journey there. I love talking to people about how they can be more successful and sharing what we've learned.
I love it. Andrew, thank you for coming on, sharing your expertise with us. Thank you for your service in the military, and really excited to see where you continue to take your organization.
Delightful. Thanks, Adam.
Awesome. And thanks everybody for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please don't forget to leave us a rating or a review. It helps us continue to bring you amazing guests like Andrew. Thanks everybody, and have a great week.